I've helped hundreds of people reverse their type 2 diabetes. And it's nothing I did. It's just, let's just follow a low glycemic diet and move more and do a few of these things. And if they follow the protocol, 99% of the time, we reverse type 2 diabetes. The same is true for hypothyroidism. The same is true if somebody has menopausal symptoms. In almost every case, if they follow the protocol I laid out, which is just it's biblical, it's natural, it's using food and lifestyle medicine, if they do that, they reverse the disease.
This is StRest. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy Award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest. You are in for a treat today. We have one of my absolute favorite podcasters and doctors ever, Dr. Josh Axe is on the show. He is a doctor of natural medicine, doctor of chiropractic, and clinical nutritionist who has dedicated his career to helping people heal through the power of food, herbs, and lifestyle medicine. Dr. Axe is the founder of Ancient Nutrition, the Health Institute, and the Longevity Club and Clinic, pioneering new approaches in medicine and longevity. He's also a New York Times bestselling author with acclaimed books, including Think This, Not That, Eat Dirt, it's a great one, Keto Diet, and Ancient Remedies. He's the host of the Dr. Josh Axe Show. It's a top 25 health podcast. Beyond his professional work, he is deeply committed to his faith and his family. He and his wife, Dr. Chelsea Axe, live in Nashville, Tennessee with their 2 daughters. I'm thrilled to welcome in Dr. Josh Axe. Dr. Axe, thank you so much for being here. I was talking to you beforehand and said you have been one of my dream guests from the very beginning of podcasting. You're part of the reason why I podcast is listening to your podcast and you on other people's podcasts, just giving so much great health science and biblical truth, which is what StRest is all about. So thank you for being here.
Awesome. Well, Kerstin, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
How do you bring together, because you are somebody who does it so well, health science and biblical truth? How do they complement each other? And why do we need both in this space?
Right. Well, I think that, I think that my entire worldview, whether it be health or not, is, biblically based. And that's the ultimate truth. I think that people have been confused for really probably hundreds of years now on what scientific truth and more sort of philosophical, spiritual truth. And so there's certain things you can measure and certain things you can't measure. So I have always sort of had a reverence for the Bible, and then a lower reverence, but still a lot of respect for things like Greek medicine, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, like all these forms of medicine that have been around for a long time. Most of those have been proven through millions of individual case studies. Today, we use a lot of these double-blind placebo studies. There are there are benefits of that, but there's also a lot of funding from pharmaceutical companies and things that can skew that. There's a lot of cherry picking data. So there's also a lot of untruth to some of the studies today. And so what I try and do is look at, okay, what is sort of the ancient philosophical medicine say, with the Bible being a big part of that? And then what does modern science say? And where's the overlap there and what's true? And I really look at a lot of patterns to see, where's the overlap in that truth, and then trying to apply that truth to patients and helping them get well. An example of this would be, when we look at the Bible talks about somebody being affected to the 3rd and 4th generation. So the Bible talks about that type of impact. In scientific literature today or medicine, that's just epigenetics. It's turning on those gene switches. And so it's that very same thing. And then I learned on, okay, well, how do we start to deal with that? Well, Chinese medicine said, you need to live in tune with sort of when the sun goes up and sun goes down. That's very in line with Genesis and us living in tune with the world God created, which is very in line with the scientific literature of cortisol and melatonin, and don't look at the blue light, and get, outdoors first thing in the morning, right when you wake up. And that leads to less stress, better sleep, better tissue regeneration. And so what I like to do is look at all of these different sort of both the scientific and more of the ancient philosophical forms of medicine, see where they overlap, and then create programs and protocols from those cross sections.
It's amazing when you look back into the Bible. There was this book that kind of changed my view on it, None of These Diseases, which when you look at what was done in the Bible, it really is to keep us healthy.
Yes, exactly. I think that, if somebody really digs deep down and understands what God's word is saying, it is the most healing book ever written. And one of the things that I found in practice and through about 20 years of being a practitioner is this: is stress, unhealthy emotions, things that are going on spiritually in your life. Those have a bigger impact on your health than diet does. Now, diet's important, and I think it's the second most important thing. I think exercise and movement can be important, but I truly believe that sort of our mental and emotional state is the biggest thing that impacts our health. I'll give you an example of this. If I take care of a patient with inflammatory bowel disease or IBS, if they would eat a conventional pizza or ice cream like Dairy Queen and then come to me the next day, typically there's my stomach hurts, my intestines hurt, I've got inflammation, I've had loose stool, some sort of gut issue. But will it impact it in a very similar way as if, hey, I'm going through a divorce, or I've got relational stress, or I'm trying to meet a work deadline, or some stressful event in their life where they get in a state of fear, worry, anxiety. Those impact the gut in a very, very similar way. So I think most health issues are related to not trusting in God enough, and that's going to lead to worry and fear, living out of tune with the way God created us to live in terms of being really in touch with nature. And then, of course, the Bible hits on diet plenty. There are farming principles of letting the land rest every 7 years and how to actually build up topsoil in the land. There are biblical principles in there, especially in the Torah, those first 5 books of the Bible. You also see them. Anyways, there's biblical principles throughout the Bible on farming and food and those sort of things as well. So I do think the Bible is sort of the ultimate health book out there today.
So much goodness to go into. I always say soul work before body work. I can work with a health coaching client and speak with women for a year trying to fix sleep, diet, movement, relationships, all of that. And it will have the breakthrough when we come to the spirituality point. So usually that's where I'll go first, is to start there with what's going on with the soul work, because that body work has to come after that. Even for me, I find when I'm looking at metrics like my HRV, I can be on point with food and movement and sleep. But if I'm stressed, it's off.
Well, I was talking with one of the world's leading labs. It's called True Diagnostics, and they do a lot of biological aging testing and organ age testing. The man there, who is a biochemist, I asked him, I said, hey, when you've done this long, and he's looked at thousands of data points on staying young and more youthful and healthy. And I said, hey, when you look at what are the single biggest drivers of longevity or somebody having a younger biological age than their chronological age? So there's a way to test for if somebody's 40, they could be that chronologically, but biologically they could actually be 30 or 50. And we've all seen people that are like in their 60s but look like they're in their 40s. Think like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You look at him, he's in his 70s. And he's so fit. He could be in his 50s. You could think that, right, if you met him. But there's other people you've seen that are in their 50s and you think they're 70. How's that possible? Well, if you've treated your body well, and your body can actually be biologically younger than your chronological age compared to the average person. Well, I asked him, hey, what's the single biggest factor that drives that? And I thought he was going to say, hey, NAD plus or this diet. He said, no, it's stress. He said, literally, when I have people do stress reducing techniques as part of a protocol or program across the board, which you have to be the biggest needle mover in someone staying younger.
So hence the podcast, because it is that important. My mom was diagnosed with dementia very, very, very young, or mild cognitive impairment is what the diagnosis was, at about 59, 60 years old. And when the doctor brought in the brain scans, some of the dark spots on her brain, he says those are likely exacerbated by stress. And this was, 15 years ago. This was a long time ago for a doctor to be actually looking at brain scans and going, stress is having a negative impact. Now, she was likely an APOE4 carrier. I know that I have one copy of the gene. And actually, just to back up to what you said about generational, that's something we talk a lot about in church, a generational sin. And then also genes. People will say to me, there's nothing you can do. I'm just going to get Alzheimer's. I'm just going to get cardiovascular disease. What do you say when it comes to that genetic piece of it?
Yeah, I mean, the overall, it's just totally untrue. I mean, really 95% of disease or more is lifestyle related. So you can have the genes, but again, they have to be turned on. It's like a light
Yeah, they
switch.
do.
And
Yeah.
that's with lifestyle. So, I've known plenty of people that have gene markers for dementia and never had it. And the reality is it was because they decided to eat more essential fatty acids and get more omega-3s in their diet and keep stress lower and continue learning throughout their life and doing a number of those things we know that keeps the brain young and increasing blood flow to the brain, ginkgo biloba, lion's mane mushroom. So there's numerous things people can do to not turn on those genes and to protect those genes from being turned on. And so just because your mom had it or dad had it or a relative had some sort of disease or you have the BRCA gene for breast cancer, that gene has to be turned on and you don't have to
Yeah.
turn on. And even if it gets turned on, you can turn it back off via lifestyle. So really it's very, very little is caused by genetics today. And all the medical literature proves that.
So a bit of a turn. We're spending more on healthcare now than ever, yet Americans are sicker. We have more gyms, yet we have more obesity. What is going on? And I know this is a big, huge 4-hour conversation, but talk to us about it a little bit.
Well, I think if you want to know the biggest cause, it's really this is that in America, we took an acute care model for healthcare and we tried to apply it to chronic disease. And it doesn't work. I mean, and this happens in a lot of things in life. We think, oh, I'm going to take this and this will work the same here, but it doesn't. This is maybe going to be a strange example, but we had somebody come. My daughter just turned 5 years old, and we had a birthday party for her. And so we were going to bring, and the person, she was new to this. She didn't know what she was doing very well. But we said, okay, we had some rental company come to put on like a Arwen is 5 birthday party thing. And she brought it on this thing of wood, and you typically put tape on it, but it was raining out and really wet and it wouldn't stick. It would have stuck to plastic even if it was wet out. It doesn't stick to wood. My point is that sometimes you think, oh, well, if I have this tape, it'll stick to anything. It doesn't. Well, our healthcare system works in a very same way. We have amazing care for if somebody is shot or in a car accident and saving someone's life in an emergency. And we use medications and surgery and those sort of things to save the person's life. We try and take that exact same system and apply it to somebody that has diabetes or high blood pressure or PCOS. It doesn't work. It is a complete and utter failure. So really our system today is all based off drugs and surgery. That's not healthcare. That's disease care. We have saving your life in an emergency for 1 day, 1 week, a few months. That's it. And so really what we've labeled alternative medicine should be primary medicine in every single case outside of emergency care. If somebody goes in their doctor today, let's say they've got high cholesterol and high blood pressure, okay, some sort of issues like that are connected to heart disease. Well, the first thing we should do is look at their diet and let's get you on eating wild salmon. Let's do grass-fed beef. Let's do more pomegranates. Let's do walnuts for those omega-3s. Let's do extra virgin olive oil. Let's get a very specific diet that reduces inflammations and give you some foods that also build up arterial health, like pomegranates and blueberries and garlic and a number of things. Okay, that's your diet. Okay, we need to start walking or cycling or just getting outdoors more. We got to move a little bit. Okay, let's do that. All right, let's get you on the supplements. We need to get on omega-3s. Let's go ahead and get you on magnesium. Let's go ahead and do some turmeric. And then let's drink some tea every day. Let's do some ginger green tea. When somebody gets on that diet, and then let's also do some things to reduce stress. Okay, start open up your Bible every single morning for 15 minutes. Okay, get in that practice 5 minutes, go on a walk in the morning and just, pray and praise God and be grateful. Okay, if somebody does that and they have high blood pressure and high cholesterol, 99% of cases, it goes away. Same thing, diabetes. I've helped hundreds of people reverse their type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
And it's nothing I did. It's just, let's just follow a low glycemic diet and move more and do a few of these things. And if they follow the protocol, 99% of the time, we reverse type 2 diabetes. They're off their medication. The same is true for hypothyroidism. The same is true if somebody has menopausal symptoms. In almost every case, if they follow the protocol I laid out, which is just, it's biblical, it's natural, it's using food and lifestyle medicine, if they do that, they reverse the disease. And so really, I think we overcomplicate things. Now, I will say this. Most people need something that's personalized for them. A lot of times people think, oh, I heard my friend did a gluten-free diet or a carnivore diet or a vegan diet or a keto or whatever it is, and then they try it themselves and it doesn't work for them. It's important to know that different health conditions require different diets and types of remedies. For instance, if I have somebody IBS, so major Crohn's, colitis, some sort of major gut issue, I have them eat primarily soups and a lot of cooked foods. But if somebody has cancer, I actually have them do some vegetable juices. I may have them do some raw foods. It's actually a very different diet. So most people go to their doctor, and even if they're natural, let's say if you go to see your conventional doctor, here's what they'll do. They'll say, take this drug. You can't reverse this. You have to be on this the rest of your life. First off, it's a complete lie. It's just they don't know how to do it. Doctors have never taken a nutrition course, not a single hour, ever. They've never learned about a supplement. So anything they've learned, they've probably learned from, I don't want to say myself, but other doctors, other people
Right.
online. They were trained. So they've never taken a single course on these things. So they don't even know what to tell you to do. So you need to remember that. But overall, that's what the conventional medicine is just going to recommend a pill. Then you have integrative doctors, and they might know a little bit more. So they might recommend to take some supplements. They might recommend, a lot of them tend to decide on one diet philosophy and just recommend it to everybody. So they're like, okay, every patient I have, I'm going to put on keto, or every single patient I have, I'm going to put on AIP, whatever type of diet it is. But everybody's a unique individual. And when you look at, I think what the Bible really teaches, I think Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, it's very much, no, you're a unique individual. There's no one like you. We're going to create a diet really specific to you and your needs. And that's really how you get the best results.
So how do you go about doing that then? Because, and it's still a mindset shift that we have to have as Americans, that we're going to our GP and we take everything as biblical from them, that this is what we're supposed to be doing. And really, I think what I hear you saying and what I believe is that we're going to them for acute traumatic, like if you get a gunshot wound, if you absolutely have to have an antibiotic, if you break your arm, and yet we need to be more integrative and functional day in and day out, so we're not band-aid medicine our root cause. But how do we get to that? What do we need to do? And why is it so expensive? Lots of questions in that one, I know.
Well, I think there's two things you need to do. One is you need to educate yourself more, and most of the stuff you can learn yourself. It's easy. It's really easy. You get the right books and resources, and just know what to do in most situations. For instance, here's an example. If you or your child get a cold, you can learn what to do really easily. Okay, just know. Okay, I'm going to have my protocol. I'm going to do elderberry and echinacea for this. And I'm going to do vitamin D, vitamin C as well. Okay, so this is going to be my protocol. My kids get the sniffles. We get a cold. This is what I'm going to do. So there's lots of things. And then I'm going to do chicken noodle soup and some bone broth and ginger tea. Okay, so you know what to do when you're in that situation. So one is self-education, knowing what to do for certain things. And you're going to learn that by listening to podcasts and attending seminars and watching YouTube videos and reading
And
newsletters
reading.
and blog posts, those sort of things.
Right.
Just to educate yourself. That's how I learned over time for the most part. I mean, I read medical journals now a lot and that sort of thing, but you really don't have to do that. I mean, for the most part, just learn some of these basics. The other thing I would say is a lot of people need to fire their doctor and go and find a new doctor. If your doctor isn't trying to get you off your medication, then you've got a terrible doctor. Every drug has a side effect, and it pulls nutrients from your body. There's not a single drug that doesn't pull vitamins, minerals, nutrients from your body. Like birth control is an example of this. People think birth control is one of the most devastating drugs on the planet. There's a study came out that said if you've taken birth control, your chance of having hypothyroidism, if you take it long term, your chance of having hypothyroidism goes up by like 287%. Because what happens is contraceptive drugs, when that estrogen raises and some of the things that happen there hormonally, it actually imbalances your gut microbiome, causing yeast overgrowth. It also pulls vitamin B, B3, B6, B9, and B12 from the body, and magnesium and some zinc. So your body is depleted of all these nutrients. That affects methylation in your body, especially people with MTHFR gene mutation. And when that happens, well, now your body is not able to fully produce enough the thyroid hormones, or convert T4 to T3. This also can lead to mood issues, like you just feel a little depressed and anxious. So many women that are on birth control, then soon after, or 5 or 10 years after, end up getting on hypothyroid medication and sometimes an antidepressant or an anxiety drug. And they don't realize that this happened because they took contraceptive drugs. And their doctor might have said, well, every woman should be on this, even we're prescribing it for acne. So every drug, and aspirin, here's another one, acetaminophen. This is one of the most dangerous drugs out there. I mean, aspirin, acetaminophen, NSAIDs, they deplete your body of numerous nutrients. There was one study at one point that said it's like the 15th leading killer, causes GI bleeding,
Wow.
gut issues, and completely destroys your gut. And yet doctors are saying it's just, and they put baby in front of it. It's just a baby aspirin. It's fine. Well, if you swallowed a whole bottle of baby aspirin, it would actually kill you if you did it in one dose. It's not as gentle as people act. Again, it's very, very harmful. So my point there is that, you need to find a doctor who wants to put you on no medication or the smallest dose for the longest period of time. And they need to be working with you on your lifestyle. They should help lay out a dietary plan for you. They should recommend supplements for you. They should be having a holistic protocol and approach to you healing. And if your doctor doesn't do that, he's in sort of the bottom half of being good. Like you should listen, you should go and find one of the top 1% of doctors, or top 10% at the very least, and find that doctor, because your health and especially your kids are way too important for that. If you have a doctor who the first thing they do is just tell you, a pediatrician, you should take all 72 of these vaccines and do it immediately. Well, I have questions. I might not want to do that. I may not want to do it at all. Or I might want to do it scheduled out like they do in Japan or certain other countries where you just have a lot less you take and they're really spread out over time. Listen, I'm not telling people what to do there, but I am telling you, find a doctor who cares and who does things with excellence. You'll find people that are the best in their field. They don't do it like everyone else. They do it differently. They go above and beyond in what they're doing. And so you want to have that type of doctor. And so one, have that type of doctor if you need a doctor. And then to save yourself money, be your own doctor. Learn everything you can for some of those
Research.
basic in order to save some money there.
You do sometimes, and actually more and more now because of the unhealth of our healthcare system, you have to go to 3, 4, 5 doctors. You have to keep trying and keep working. And just because you've been with one for so long doesn't mean that they're still who you should be with and that they can help you as you got into this next stage in your life. When I was struggling with cysts and was confused by what was going on, I went to 5 different gynecologists before we really were able to figure out what was going on. And I felt comfortable that they were making the right decisions and not being Band-Aid medicine, not just wanting to cut me open for the sake of cutting me open. So that's a full-time job, going through 5 different doctors and the scheduling and the administrative part of that. But you're worth it if you want to, what we're talking about, have that health and longevity that we're all looking for.
Yeah. And sometimes, listen, I think if you go in with the frame of mind of, hey, who's the best person out there? And who is somebody who I know has helped a lot of people with the same condition I've had and done it naturally, well, then, sometimes you can go right to that person. You don't have to search through 5, but sometimes it does take that long. It just really depends.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is we're living in a world today where you can go visit somebody in a virtual practice. So there are people you can get access to that are the best in the world where you can do a Zoom call with them in that way. So it doesn't have to be, they don't have to be in your city or even your state.
What are your thoughts, doctor, on like testing versus symptoms? Where's your happy medium there? What do you think?
Yeah, I actually think most of the time you can figure it out with just the symptoms. But I do think there's also a time and a place for blood work. I do think, now let me say this, I think a lot of the conventional blood work, it's kind of looking at things in a static state. Sometimes, I don't want to say it's not accurate. It's not as helpful as maybe other blood work could be. And it really depends on, so let me give an example here. Some of my favorite tests include something called an OAT test. It stands for organic acids test. That is like a micronutrient test. I'm looking at what vitamins and minerals you're deficient in. I love a stool test, it's called a GI map. I love looking at your gut microbiome to see what the good bacteria is, what the bad bacteria is, those sort of things. That's another test I really like. I also really like something called an organ age test, looking at the biological age of your organ system so I know which organ system we need to strengthen and heal. The tests I like tend to be more root cause tests, the ones I just shared. Or I also, two of my favorites as well, I have an Oura ring, and I love looking at my sleep score. I love looking at HRV. That's a good indicator of stress. And then I also like, probably one of my favorites, if not my favorite, is a continuous glucose monitor. It's something you put on the back of your tricep for 14 days or 1 month, and it reads off your insulin, your blood sugar, basically tells you how your body reacts to every meal in every stressful event in your life. So you know what you should be eating and what you shouldn't. That's incredibly helpful. This sort of dynamic test that's changing every day, every moment of the day. So those are the best tests because they're more root cause of telling you what's causing the thing. If you've got high cholesterol or blood pressure, that's the symptom. Okay. So, okay, I know you have that. So that's kind of a little bit more downstream. But upstream is, oh, well, part of the reason you have that is you have a magnesium deficiency, or you're deficient, or you're not healing because you have this zinc deficiency, or vitamin D, or, oh, your bacteria is really off in your gut. And so that's affecting something else. And so I think the standard CBC blood work of testing cholesterol and creatinine and all of those different markers in the body, those can be somewhat beneficial. But I actually think these other tests I mentioned that aren't standard, the tests I mentioned are things a functional medicine doctor or someone like that is going to tend to do, versus the standard old blood tests that have been around a long time aren't quite as helpful. It's not that they're not helpful at all. They're just not quite as helpful as some of the other tests that I mentioned. Now, one other thing that I use in treating patients is most of the time I have them send me a picture of their tongue, stick out their tongue, and I can take a look. And this is a ancient form of testing done in Chinese medicine primarily, where you can tell what's going on internally with somebody based on their tongue. If somebody has ridges on the outside of their tongue, they almost look like bite marks. That's called a spleen chi deficiency. That's basically your digestive system's weak. So we really need to build it back up. If you have a coating on your tongue, now in Western medicine, we call that candida, but in Eastern, it's yeast overgrowth, it's dampness, very specific foods, bitter foods, taking herbs like berberine, taking more cinnamon, more ginger. An herb like chromium will help clear off that tongue. If it's only on the back of your tongue, that's more immune system related. It means you have too much mucus and inflammation in your intestines. There's ways to heal that. If the tongue is more of a blue or purple color, that's lack of oxygen. We got to drive way more oxygen into the cell. So my point there is that's what I do. It's what a lot of acupuncturists do. But what I like to do is what I really started off based on your first question is I will look at the picture of somebody's tongue. I will look at their symptoms. And in some cases, if we do it, I'll look at the blood work, preferably some of the more root cause blood work, and then put together a protocol based on some of those things that I see.
Everybody in the car right now looking in the mirror, their tongue, please don't do that. Do that when you get home. Don't look right now. Please be very safe. We'll be right back. Don't go away. It's just getting good. I do not really have much makeup on, a little bit of lip gloss, and my absolute favorite, Dr. Deness Skin Science. This is her Tinted Defense Day Cream SPF 40. You can see by my bottle that I use it every single day, and this is the supersized bottle, which is what you absolutely need. It gives me the protection that I need because it has SPF. It gives me the blur because it has those pigments. But most importantly, like all of Dr. Deness's skincare products, they actually work. She uses the most of the efficacious ingredients, and they're all clean. You know, I wouldn't talk to you about anything in your skincare or your beauty that wasn't clean beauty. This brand really has changed my skin. Listen, I'm 47 years old. I need a little extra help. I'll tell you where to start. Other than the skin defense, you're going to need Hydro Shield. Oh my goodness, the hydration. It has changed my deeply dehydrated life and makes it look like perhaps I got all the sleep and I have no stress and I didn't cry in the bathroom after my kids went to sleep at night. It really, really works. Everything does. And with clean beauty. And because we want you to have your own midlife glow up and be able to be, I don't know, maybe makeup free from time to time like I am right now. Dr. Deness has given you a little something off. Go to drdeness.com and use the code STREST. That's STREST for a discount. You'll thank me later. Now back to the show. I hear you talk a lot about supplements, and I want to get into supplements, and I know that you do your own brands and you have done, and I want to talk about that. But you also talk a lot about, let's first just go back to your food. But why is it so hard to get the nutrients we need out of the food that we get these days?
Well, one, it depends on where you're shopping. But if you're shopping in a conventional grocery store and buying non-organic produce, for instance, or meat and dairy for that matter, it's due to soil depletion and the way we raise the animals, what they eat. So, there's a study that came out. I'm writing a book right now. And one of the things I'm getting into in one of the chapters is soil depletion today. I mean, most of our food has 25% 65%, 80% less nutrients than it did 100 years ago. Partly what's happened is we haven't followed the biblical principle of letting our soil rest and rotating our crops and also letting animals graze in between. Okay. So what happens today is we have monocropping, and that's where you just grow soybeans or corn or wheat. And then we do the same thing every year, and we never add nutrients back to the soil outside of 3 nutrients. There's like 80 nutrients. We only replace it with 3. And so what happens is the soil now, we have topsoil. Like I remember when I was at my grandparents growing up, we would fish, and I would get a coffee can and I would take a shovel and we'd dig down, and it would be like this, it'd be like black, dark brown soil, and we get worms, earthworms, and we'd go fishing with those. But that topsoil was really thick at their house, it'd go a foot down or so. And that's how it should be. Today, if you go in your backyard in the typical neighborhood, there's almost no topsoil, almost none. And so if you would grow, I did this once, and this is when I knew very little about health. I remember when this is probably like almost 17 years. This is a long time ago. I gardened. I tried to grow pumpkins and squash, all this stuff just in the dirt in my backyard. Nothing grew, or it grew a little bit and just died. And I just didn't know anything about soil. Well, soon after I started learning about soil, the next year I went and actually got garden beds planted had really good soil. I mean, it grew like crazy. I mean, right now, my wife and I have some garden beds at our house. I mean, the plants are just growing like crazy because I'm very strategic. I do a lot of like mushroom extracts and a lot of these different things in sort of the soil. And so, everything just grows so quickly, and you never have weeds. And that's really but the point there is that most of our food, like if you buy a tomato today and you take a bite of that, you're getting probably half the nutrients versus if you bought the tomato at your local farmer's market or your own backyard. In fact, sometimes it's like 1/4. So it's like, do you remember this old, there used to be this old Total Cereal commercial, and they would say, in order to equal the nutrients in 1 bowl of Total Cereal, you'd have to eat 20 bowls of Frosted Flakes or something like that.
Do you remember that commercial? Yeah.
These are in the 90s, okay? These commercials. Well, the same thing is true. In order to equal the nutrients in 1 tomato from your backyard garden or from the local farmer's market, you'd have to eat 4 conventional tomatoes. And the other thing is you're also getting pesticides like glyphosate when you're eating that conventional tomato. So that's a big part of the problem today is the nutrient density of the food is so much lower. This is why a lot of people recommend multivitamins, but ultimately, this is why shop your local farmer's market, shop foods that are in season and organic, or have just even an herb garden in your backyard. Even before Chelsea and I had a house where we could do garden beds and all the things, we at least had an herb garden where we did some basil and parsley and cilantro and chives and that sort of thing. But that's a big reason why. And here's the thing, if we followed the biblical principles, we wouldn't have any of these issues. All food would be nutrient dense.
And so because of this, when you do your own products and supplements, soil is a big part of it. Talk a little bit about your background in that and what you do.
Well, myself and one of my best friends and business partners too, Jordan Rubin, we own 4,000 acres in Missouri and another 150 in Tennessee. And we grow our own herbs. In fact, on our 150 acres, in Tennessee, we have a lot of greenhouses. We grow a lot of, some you've heard of, some you haven't. We grow Schisandra, we grow holy basil, we grow like 50 things. We grow golden turmeric, blue turmeric, and green turmeric. We grow ginger, we grow galangal, loads of herbs. Okay. We also grow a lot of berries. We grow goji berries, we grow mulberries, blueberry, blackberry, raspberry. So we do really a lot of things that are used as herbal medicine. And we actually have a 14-year study going with the Rodale Institute, where we're going through on our farm and seeing how far and deep we can build the topsoil back in the shortest period of time. But when we sent our last sample back, the people said, you need to do it again because we don't think this is correct because we built it back so fast. And part of it is us having the animals graze around there and they defecate. Like people are saying like animals are bad for the environment. They're not bad for the environment. They're amazing if you do it the right way. If they're just grazing the grass and defecating and urinating, they're helping you build more nutrient-dense soil, which then goes into plants, which then goes into our own body. So, but it's really through following just biblical methods and ideas around something called permaculture, but it's a regenerative agriculture.
Let's go in for a second. Schisandra, that is, people have been talking about it a lot, but what is that used for? What are you using it for?
Yeah, so Schisandra is a berry. It's known in Chinese medicine to be the only food that has all 5 flavors. So it's bitter, it's sour, it's umami, it's sweet, and it's salty, all 5. So it's known as a harmonizer too, but it has these amazing action on the body. It's typically used as a immune booster and a liver support. So it supports the liver and it supports the immune system. I give it to anybody that has mononucleosis, any sort of like
Wow.
major fatigue, major lower immune system. It's great for cancer. It's an adaptogen, so it actually can lower cortisol a little bit as well. Yeah, liver and immune issues are probably at the top of the list for it, but it's also an adaptogen. So there's lots and lots of benefits there.
It's a great one. I think especially when you look at women, most women who are watching and listening to this podcast are north of 45. We are struggling with going to doctors and saying, here are my symptoms. And just like you were talking about earlier, it's Band-Aid. Oh, you're fine. This is normal. Or here, take an antidepressant, or even just completely ghosted with, oh, it's all in your head. What do we do? How do we get help? Where do we go? And again, to be able to feel heard, but also get solutions.
I think when you look at women, especially that are perimenopausal and menopausal, there are very specific nutrition needs. In fact, one of the things that I don't think people address enough is the nutritional needs between men and women. They're very
Mm-hmm.
different, personalized nutrition, and the nutritional differences for women that are that are having a cycle in terms of they should be eating different foods based on where they're at in their cycle. For instance, if estrogen is low, the carbs should be lower. As estrogen goes up, you should actually increase your carb consumption. And then there are certain herbs you want to be doing and foods that build blood before or certain times of your cycle, certain foods when your estrogen's coming down and before you do that for liver detoxification, for balancing estrogen. So herbs like milk thistle. So there's that. And then women that are perimenopausal and menopausal, you really want to focus on herbs and foods that are going to build back moisture in your body. In Chinese medicine, they call it yin building foods. But these are foods that help with hot flashes and night sweats and skin getting too dry and vaginal lubrication. I mean, all these sort of issues. Because what happens in China, when your estrogen drops, because that's what happens during menopause, right? It starts to drop estrogen and progesterone a little bit with it as well. That hormone is responsible for moistening your body and cooling your body. This is why you get hot flashes, is your body now isn't as supported at cooling itself. So you get these hot flashes because estrogen's low. But you can fix that with food. In fact, in Japan, less than 25% of women have any menopausal symptoms at all, almost none.
Wow. Why?
And part of it is their diet. Did you know in Japan, when women go through menopause, they really increase their soy intake? That's good. You should do that when you go through menopause. Now, women that have high estrogen or are estrogen dominant, they shouldn't do that. Okay, especially when you're younger in your 20s, something like that. But of women that are mid 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, you want to do foods that are really going to build up moisture in your body. So some of the best foods would be flax seeds are amazing for this, probably the single best food. So doing flax seeds, like a couple tablespoons of flax seeds in a smoothie. Again, soybeans, it could be miso, could be natto, or just edamame, but doing some sort of organic soy product. You can also do berries, blackberries and raspberries and blueberries are very good for this. Or figs are really, really good for bringing this moisture to the body. Pears are another one. Yogurt, like coconut yogurt's very good for this. Yolks, like duck eggs and duck meat are actually very good. Now, if you don't want to eat that, you don't have to, but eggs themselves are very good. More omega-3 fatty acids. So there are very specific foods that are going to build back this moisture in the body and support estrogen. But most women who are menopausal, they'll see their doctor. Their doctor will never tell them that.
No,
And
ever.
no,
We'll never
and
talk about food.
and another big one's sweet potato and yams, chickpeas. But you could follow a really specific diet, and then there's a few herbs that are amazing for this. Black cohosh is by far the best, followed by red clover and shatavari. I think those three in particular. I also like Don Quai, but you could get a blend that's very good. There's some herbal teas you could drink. But honestly, if you have menopausal symptoms, you could take some of these herbs and eat some of the foods I mentioned, and it will improve just dramatically.
So my big takeaway, my daughter, we have chickens on our property and my daughter's been trying to get us to get ducks. So I'm happy to say, okay, babe, we got to get ducks. Dr. X said duck eggs.
Yeah, at our farm in Tennessee, we raise a lot of poultry, and ducks are primarily they're really good. If you also have a garden, they will go through and eat all the grubs and all the things that typically destroy your plants. They're the single best thing for protecting herbs and plants out there. I wanted to mention this as well if people are curious, because I know a lot of times people are saying, hey, I need to find a good practitioner. I do have a clinic where I have a team of practitioners that I've trained, and I get on once a week and meet with patients in a group setting and answer every question and help guide them through it. But we lay out a
Amazing.
diet plan, we lay out a supplement plan, we lay out lifestyle protocols. We have about a 4 to 5 month program people go through, especially women with menopausal symptoms, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, autoimmune disease, PCOS, insulin resistance. Those are probably some of the biggest conditions we help people with. It's called the Health Institute or the Longevity Institute, or look up Dr. Axe, virtual clinic, that sort of thing. But if people are looking for a program or practitioners to meet with to help them, again, they could, I'm happy to help. And there's other good practitioners you could find. But as I've always mentioned, try and find that top 1% of people or 10% of practitioners, because it's like in any field. You want to go to somebody who's the best, not the worst, not somebody who's at the bottom, right, in their profession. So you always want to be looking out for that.
When we look at the top main components of our wellness, eat, sleep, move, relationships, and spirituality, rank them for us, doctor. How do you work with people? Like, what's the most important, second most important? How will you go in order?
Well, I think diet and stress are 1A and 1B. I mean, diet and stress are at the very, very top for most people. When I think about reversing everything from autoimmune disease to even putting together a protocol or helping somebody who's battling, MS or cancer, or even no matter how serious it is or how sort of minor the symptoms are, those are the two things we want to focus on at the largest scale. And along with diet, that's supplementation, but diet's even more important. So when it comes to diet, really looking at very specifically what are the ideal meals you should be eating: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's very important. And when it comes to stress, most people have some type of emotional stress that's causing their health problem. In fact, different emotions create different diseases. For instance, worry affects more of your digestive system. Fear, we know this already, everybody knows this, but fear affects more of your adrenal glands and your stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline and even melatonin. So fear is going to cause more reproductive issues, more adrenal issues, and even more thyroid issues. That sort of fear-based stress. So fear of failure, fear of disappointing others. Being a people pleaser, that's a form of fear. You want other people to like you. And if they don't, there's a fear involved in that. Worry, it's not just worry, it's trying to control things out of your control or being obsessive or over studying things, even your own condition. So that's all digestive. If you had something happen in the past that you have not been able to let go of, you have resentments towards someone, unforgiveness, or there's maybe something bad happened to you. Maybe it was a form of abuse and it happened 30 years ago, but you still live with those memories today, or you feel guilt and shame with that. That all affects your immune system. Okay. Anger, if you feel frustrated, anger, and you don't have a good, clear vision of your future or plan moving forward, that affects your liver, gallbladder system. Different emotions cause diseases in different organ systems. So you really want to get to the root of, why do I feel this way? What happened? And a lot of people have had childhood trauma or memories that still bother them today. One of the best ways to heal from that is write down, what still bothers me today? What is it? Yeah. And then working with a counselor or a psychologist, or some of it you can work through yourself, but ideally in most cases, I think doing it with somebody else is the most healing, especially a professional. It could be a pastor, but I think going through and doing that with somebody is very healing for most people. I think it's the single biggest thing that people aren't doing today.
And I think it's very, very hard for us to grasp, because we're like, no, okay, well, where is the blood work? How is this going to get fixed? And what we're saying is, we need you to start thinking of the relational and spiritual relation to your body, not just what the blood work says.
Yeah. Again, if you want to reverse a condition, 50% of it is that emotional, spiritual tie, the childhood trauma, the over anxiousness, the worry, the being busy every moment of the day. So, if somebody has an issue, let's say it's hypothyroidism, and they start taking the methylated B complex and the selenium and and they get on the right foods, right? Their protein intake, start doing a lot more wild fish and berries and all the foods you need for thyroid. Maybe they'll improve 50%, but if you want to heal all the way, you've got to address these other things. And so much of that's bringing Jesus into it. It's bringing Jesus in and opening yourself up and doing it with this others. I think so much of our healing we try and do by ourselves in this Western society. Everything is sort of like, I'm going to keep this a secret. I think if you truly want to heal, really getting to the root, pulling these things up by the root, like here's an example. Like I had this time in my life when I was in high school, a teacher told me, or she asked me to stay after class. Her name was Miss Noble. And she said, what do you want to do after high school? Because I don't think she thought I was going to graduate. And I said, I told her, I said, I want to be a doctor. And she laughed out loud. She said, Josh, listen, you'll never be a doctor with your GPA. She said, my daughter had a 3.8 GPA. She barely got into med school. She said, with your GPA, you'll be lucky to ever pass high school. And I was getting like a D- in her class. I got an F on the paper. She's handed me back this paper. She said, you need to try harder. And then 2 weeks later, I went into a doctor who diagnosed me with ADHD and then told my mom and talked about me like I wasn't even in the room. And he said, your son has a learning disability. He's going to have trouble learning his whole life. And so after those two experiences within a 2 week period of time, I started thinking to myself, well, I'm not smart. Like there's
Something's
medically
wrong.
something not right with me. I've got a disability. I'm going to have a trouble learning. Everything's going to be hard for me. And I barely graduated high school with just like a 2.0 GPA. I mean, barely graduated. And then to get into college, I didn't get into the school I wanted, but then they sent me a letter. It was University of Kentucky. And they said, listen, you're not in, but we're doing this program this summer, the first time ever. It's summer school. And if you come in and you average above a 3.0 in summer school, we'll let you in. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. I went to summer school. First class I had was English 101, and I had a paper. And I tried real hard. I turned in this paper. And the teacher, Miss Williams, she said, Josh, can you stay after class? And I just felt sick. I thought, oh no, not this again. And she said, Josh, what's your major? And I said, Miss Williams, I haven't chosen a major yet. And she said, I think you should consider being a journalism major, English major, because you're a really talented writer. 40 kids in the class, you got the highest grade, great job. And I was like, it changed my life. And so I had one person in my life tell me something that wrecked me for 4 or 5 years. I felt like I was worthless and not smart, and that lived with me. And then someone else said something, and I decided to latch a hold of that and say, that's my truth, and move
Yes.
forward with that. But there's a lot of people, not a lot of people, every single person listening to this has had somebody at some point who said something, hey, you look weird, or you're not good at this, or they said something to you and it made you feel less than, and then honestly, it still affects you today. It's affected your identity. It's affected your beliefs about yourself, your confidence, your self-value. And most people they're in their 50s and they've never addressed it and been and said, you know what? That's actually not true. This is the truth. This is what God says about me. This is what the people that care say about me. And I had to go back and start thinking, well, it's not that I'm not smart. It's that I didn't try. Hey, maybe I'm not as good at math, but I am great at science. I am great at English, right? Can't all be great at everything. So it's just a matter of going back and doing that healing work. And there's so much healing and value in that.
Last couple questions that I ask everybody who comes on the podcast. First of all, is there any non-negotiable, or give me a couple of your non-negotiable health practices, mind, body, spirit, that are important to you?
Yeah. The first is, and this is going to encompass a few things, but it's win the morning, win the day. Start off every morning with your spiritual growth and eating something great. What I do every morning is I wake up and I just say, God, all glory to you. I'm so, so grateful. I'm so grateful for my life. I'm so grateful that Jesus gave his life for me. I'm so grateful for my beautiful, amazing wife, my 2 daughters. I'm so grateful. And then I'll come downstairs and I tend to go on a walk immediately. If it's walkable, it's not sleeting. I go for a 15-minute walk outside and I just pray. I pray, and then I walk inside and I'll make myself a superfood smoothie and I'll read my Bible. And I win my morning. Spiritual growth. I eat something really good. I see the girls and my wife and connect with the family. And then I, jump into my mission and my calling. But I think for most people, you can win that morning and schedule that, eat a really good quality breakfast, high protein, nutrient dense, and then just spend some time with God. Those are good practices for everything.
This is so important. My next book that's coming out, when we were shopping it, was titled Change Your Morning, Change Your Life.
I love it.
The title has changed, but that's so true. It's all about how you start your day. What about supplements? I know everybody's bio-individual and it's different, but do you have hey, these are 1 or 2 that I feel like are important?
Yeah. Well, the greatest nutritional deficiency in terms of studies is vitamin D. 94% of people are vitamin D deficient. So what I would do though is get a vitamin D with a vitamin K2 and also take a magnesium supplement with it, because that combination will increase the absorption. So in terms of nutrients, those are the most important, followed by probably zinc for most people. And then I think taking herbs for a lot of people is great. The winter months, a lot of ginger and cinnamon, really healing. The summer months, other times a year, a lot of turmeric, a lot of rosemary, those sort of things are very healing for people. But find the right herbs for yourself, the right supplements. Most of it comes down to what's right for you. Having a functional medicine practitioner, could be my team or another team, go and dial that in for you. I think for most people, the studies also show omega-3s are really good. Now, you can get most of those in your diet, but if you're not getting wild salmon that day or not getting something like walnuts, then you probably want to take an omega-3 supplement for a lot of people. But I would say those are probably the biggest things that address the most deficiencies.
And I know everybody listening is going to want to hear more. I encourage you to go to Dr. Axe's show because you talk a lot about what to eat during different seasons, what to eat for your menstrual cycle. I mean, so much, and the herbs that go into that. So if you want master classes on that, please go over to his podcast. Last question. What's one thing everybody can do today to help reduce the bad stress in their life?
The thing that actually I think helps me a lot is I think about I go on a lot of walks. I mean, I just go out my door and walk. I mean, there are so many studies showing if you walk right after you eat, like go on a 15, 20-minute walk before or after you eat, it is amazing for your digestive system. So in the morning, try and do it around lunch at work or not work, either way, just try and take a walk. We go on family walks after dinner a lot with our dogs too. So, I mean, I think that taking walks is very, very good for a lot of people. Very, very good. If you can do it in nature, it's even better. But yeah, going on walks is really good.
And if you can do it with another person, that's even better because you need that connection. We need that connection.
Yep.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, well, one, I would say my podcast, it's the Dr. Josh Axe Show. We cover so many topics, getting more in depth in nutrition there. So that's on YouTube, it's on Apple, it's on Spotify. But go check out the Dr. Josh Axe Show. You can subscribe there as well. And then my social handles at Dr. Josh Axe. I do a lot on Instagram and a pretty fair amount on Facebook, and then a lot on YouTube as well. So those are the big channels for me there. And then my practice, it's at the Health Institute, and people could go and see, once they get in the program, I'm part of that, helping. And then I've got a whole team of practitioners that I've trained to help people with, whether it's menopause or hypothyroid or Hashimoto's or autoimmune, a number of different conditions to help people heal. So that would be the other place.
Fantastic. We'll put all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking the time. You are such a blessing, and we're so grateful to have you in this space.
It was an honor. Thanks, Kerstin. God bless everybody.
I'm really excited about the next episode of StRest because it's a little bit different. We have Kim Dargano. I'll just go out and say it, 26 years old, and she's talking all about hormone health. And before you think that doesn't apply to me because I haven't been 26 in 3 decades, I want you to listen to this episode. The very first thing that we need to do in all of the crazy that comes with our hormones is invite the Lord in. This woman, first of all, has the schooling behind her to understand our hormones, whether you are 26 or you are 56, but she can also help you manage no matter where you are in your hormonal health. That's coming up on the next episode of StRest. Don't miss it. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help others find the podcast and join our community. Follow me on social media at Kerstin.Lindquist for daily tips and inspiration. And visit my website at www.Kerstin-Lindquist.com to sign up for our newsletter and receive exclusive content. The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition. The host of this podcast is a certified health coach and medical researcher, not a licensed medical professional, and the content shared does not constitute medical advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we encourage you to do your own research and consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your healthcare treatment plans. Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.